my 90-year-old grandmother would call you right now verklempt, like you're a little disheveled, Peter
Well, yeah,
Schoenke.
exactly. Yeah.
Now you're in good hands, man. You're good hands. So
I'm
we're
still in
happy to.
baseball mode. Like I thought, oh yeah, I'll do this by Friday. I'll have recovered from baseball opening day, but that's just not the case. Still digging out of a huge hole.
Yeah. So, well, speak up a little bit because, your microphone, you're using the laptop microphone. So if you don't mind just speaking up a little bit, but you know what? Let's do a dynasty startup draft today. And we're going to be on the same team, right? So I was going to tell you the premise of this is that the fact that you're not in hardcore dynasty mode right now is actually refreshing because I'm too in the trenches here and I want your sober takes on these things as we move through this Superflex draft. So I think this is actually the perfect setup.
Okay, that's good. Once you chime in here, I'm in go mode, dude.
Yeah. So we're gonna pick fourth in a Superflex draft. Okay. And then let's do this. Will take about 20 minutes, and then let's talk some business of fantasy sports. So let me figure this out here. Let me add you in here. Okay. So we got our board. Do you know how to make it so the board is full size? If you hover over the little bottom right there, you could blow it up to full screen so you could actually see what's going on.
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay. So this is a Superflex draft. Peter and I are picking fourth, tight end premium, and we're doing 3 receivers, 2 flex, and a Superflex. Obviously, 1 tight end, quarterback, all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 2 flex, and Superflex. So, all right, without any further ado, my friend, the first guy picks, you could see the board?
Yep.
First guy picks Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. We're up on pick 4. Now, do you agree that those 3 would be the first 3 off in your Superflex rankings, or if you were picking any of those spots?
Yeah, I agree. It's a Superflex 2 quarterback league. You've got to just bite the bullet and take quarterbacks, right? So
and it's Dynasty. And it's Dynasty.
That too, right? So it always bothers me in the 2 quarterback format of any league type. I'm so weight on the quarterback, and I get into one of those leagues, and I say, it just kills me to take Dak Prescott in the second round, or whoever the later round quarterback.
Right? No, you got it. Like you're taking Jared Goff.
Later on during the season, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. But it's
like big.
Right? Like I look at our dynasty rankings, and we have Brock Purdy. Like
he's a second round pick in Dynasty Superflex.
I know, and it's just like, to me, that's like. That is just swallowing some tough medicine, right? I mean, I'm not a Brock Purdy hater, but it's just like, I'm not, in a redraft league, that just is like against my religion. So, but yeah, you got to suck it up and do it. I mean, I'm taking CJ Stroud. I mean, he's
okay. Yep. No,
he's got a huge setup, everything. I mean, I know Lamar runs and Jalen runs, but age wise, all that kind of stuff. I mean,
you nailed it.
You're taking the sexy upside guy in this kind of format. One of the things about the format is here's where I'm going to be the I want to say anti-dynasty guy, but okay. So the other thing about my dynasty format, okay, you're in like a zillion dynasty leagues, right? What percentage of those dynasty leagues actually make it to year 3?
So I've been lucky, right? So, but normally you're right. It's like the NFL. It's very similar to an NFL career, right? Where they last about 3 years, and then people start dropping out, and then it's over. But I've been lucky where I'm very commissioner. I vet my commissioner, and I look at other leagues, and so I've been lucky where they've all lasted 5+. But you're right. The average dynasty league is probably dead within 3 years.
Yeah. So like that really influences, and that's any sport. If I'm ever in a dynasty league, baseball, basketball, football, I'm way more tilted towards going for it in year 1 than the rest of the league. And I think you get a competitive advantage because, it just doesn't, most of the times everyone's got good aspirations, but things change and, 3 years later it's over or half the leagues quit. And so I always do that. Now, if you got a good setup and you have a lot of faith, but to me, that's like the dynasty factor that people just don't take into account as much as possible. It's just that like, we're doing it all on a theoretical basis, and we're giving people the best advice for a longer term horizon. But you also really have to factor in the reality that your league's probably not going to stick together, and if you're putting in money, you may only really be in it for 2 or 3 years at most.
We have about 250 people in here watching us right now, and anyone that's a regular to this channel, Peter, knows that there's certain people that are win never. I'm win always. I'm always going for it, even when I'm a bad team. I'm trading for those Mike Evans, Derrick Henry type pieces. But okay, so we're gonna draft CJ Stroud here. I totally agree with that. Obviously, the addition of Stephon Diggs, right, and he's got the age, already proved it here. All right, we're coming back now in the second round. As you saw, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson rounded out the top 6. First receiver went off the board at 7. Justin Herbert, who'd been falling in a lot of these drafts because of all of the change in philosophy in
because he has
LA.
no weapons whatsoever.
Right? I mean, they'll get one. They'll have a number. They'll either get Marvin Harrison or Neighbors or Dunze in this draft. So they'll have a number one.
Even then, I mean, even then, it's going to be like all rookies and some maybe washed up running backs they've signed. And yeah, I mean, I love the player, but the setup just looks terrible this year. And obviously the draft could happen. There could be trades, all kinds of stuff, which is part of the problem of doing a dynasty draft right now is that you still have such a huge amount of movement left. But
yeah, people are doing it though.
I might take him just because, one thing about it as a Vikings fan, like I would love it if the Vikings traded for him. I mean, it's probably not possible with cap and all that kind of stuff and things like that.
Who traded for who?
For Herbert.
Oh, for Justin Herbert, right? Okay,
yeah,
and gave up those 2 picks, right?
I mean, I don't know if it's realistic, but I just think like I mean the contract situation, all that kind of stuff, and then the price might not be there. But it seems like a really nice buy low, maybe in fantasy too. But like I said, I'm my short term horizon, my outlook for dynasty is always very short term, and at least this year it looks pretty. Like I think I just can't even see a scenario where he's going to come out of the draft and the alignment for this year, and it's not going to be a run heavy offense with limited weapons around him. So it's just it seems pretty bad, but maybe it's a buy, and if you're looking for a longer term horizon for him. So.
Yeah, and he went in the second round of a dynasty startup I'm in right now, and here he goes pick 8. That's fine. Yeah. So we're on the clock here at 2:09. Peter, we took CJ Stroud in round 1. You see the options there on the left. I could scroll down a little bit, but you have your cheat sheet as well. Who are we taking here at 2:09 in the second round?
Well, we're still going quarterback, right? And we just kind of have to in a startup like this.
I mean, given who's on the board with Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, that I'm okay with both of those guys. But, I've been doing some collaboration content with, us over at RotoWire and some of the guys at Dynasty Trades in 5. And more, they've talked me into going what they call a trash can quarterback and taking those position players and, putting in, QB 15, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff types as my QB 2, almost like how we treated hero running back for so many years. So I'm good either way. I love Trevor Lawrence, love Brock Purdy here, but if you like a position player, a wide receiver, AJ Brown, Garret Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Puka, I'm totally okay with that. I'm going to leave the decision to you.
I mean, I'd probably go wide receiver if we don't think a quarterback's there. I mean, dynasty, it's all about wide receiver in dynasty. Obviously, the 2 quarterback setup here makes it.
We'll get one.
So yeah, so I would probably go top wide receiver available on the board.
AJ Brown or Garret Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. or Puka. I think those are the next realistic guys.
Go Garret Wilson. I mean, I'm not. This is another one where the setup this year for the Jets could be really good. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers is shell himself. But he's young. He's kind of proven. Hopefully he'll run into some good quarterback play at some point in the next 1 to 3 years. So
yeah, and Garret Wilson also, it's like we're not stuck with him. He's going to be a player that can be tradable. He's a liquid player. Whereas if you take AJ Brown, sure, people are going to want him, but as they click on his player card and they see age 27 and a half, he becomes a little less liquid in the market. So that's why I like that you picked Garret Wilson. I would have been okay with the upside of Marvin Harrison if you wanted to go, nuclear upside there, but either way, I think they're in the same tier. Of course, the 2 quarterbacks go right after that: Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, AJ Brown, and then 2 running backs. It's in the third round. So far, there's been 4 running backs: Bijan, Brees, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor. Do you agree that those 4 guys are kind of the exception to the rule with you could take a quarterback early in Dynasty?
You mean taking running back that early?
Running back that early. I said quarterback running because normally, like you said, these guys age.
The Dynasty is that I don't know. I always just wait on running back. There's so many times where I've taken running backs where a guy like Bijan or Brees Hall just flames out so fast,
So
and you think,
Todd Gurley.
yeah, just like, so, in any dynasty, whatever format, I just really try to look at them as just a very, very short-term horizon. So, um, I mean, Bijan and Brees Hall, love them in redraft this year, and they might be awesome, but literally, like, one injury or whatever, they might be toast. So I'd be taking running backs late in this format.
I
That'd be
totally
my.
agree. I'm very happy going with like a Zach Moss type and, Jerome Ford or Zamir White or those type of guys if I have to. Hopefully we'll get someone a little bit better. We can get like
Yeah.
Derrick Henry late or, Tony Pollard or, mix and match. But I think we're in agreement here. All right. I don't even want to look at tight end yet in the third round, even with the premium. Do we agree on that?
Yeah, tight end's another one where I would just be
Right.
waiting forever. I mean, basically, like, my dynasty setup's going to be like, I'm going to painfully take quarterbacks a lot earlier than I normally would. I'm going to go heavy wide receiver. I'm going to wait really late on running back and tight end, and go quantity over quality on running back, and tight end just try to pick some spots. But in tight end, I'm just going to, a dynasty format, I'm going to try to look at a guy who was like a last year's bum, who's young, because they just take so long to develop.
Right, the 3-year thing, right? Like almost like a Pat
Yeah.
Fryermuth, right? Who was bad last year, good his first year. And if we have to get him, I mean, at tight end 15, he can give us tight end 8 numbers.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd say like a Michael Mayer,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Rookie, right? Someone like that. I mean, obviously he's got competition there, and the short-term outlook is kind of poor, but like guys like that were really good in college and hyped up and just didn't do as, kind of disappointed year one. Those are the guys I'd want to take shots on late here, just because, they emerge.
Fair enough.
Right? So.
All right, we're in round 3 now. This is where I want to maybe deploy your strategy of the league can fall apart in 3 to 4 years. Christian McCaffrey's available, but if we want to stick with our, I wasn't going to take McCaffrey in round 2. If we want to take him in round 3, he's not going to just be garbage in 2 years. He'll still be a usable dynasty asset, but Puka, Malik Neighbors on the board, Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle. Does any of those names entice you? And of course, quarterback-wise, I still think it's a little early to take Tua, Jared Goff. I mean, there's already been 14 quarterbacks off the board, but this is where I would prefer to wait a little bit. What are you thinking here? We've already had.
I would take McCaffrey, but my year one bias, obviously is a factor. But also, like, you can trade him, right? So it's just like, I mean, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into the season, Stroud's injured and just looking like a lost year. You're going to get value. You know what I mean? Somebody's going to give you some stuff for him.
Totally. Yeah. McCaffrey is one of those in what we call point scoring season. He'll be worth a lot, right? You'll be able to get a first, no problem. You'll probably be able to get first and a young asset. Say like, a player that gets drafted at, in our rookie drafts coming up at 111, 112 that doesn't produce right away. Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver out of Texas that blazed the combine. Let's say he's off to a slow start. You'll be able to get him and a first for Christian McCaffrey to a contending team. All right. So we took Stroud, Garret Wilson, and Christian McCaffrey, the first 3 picks. That gives us a lot of position flexibility here, Peter. So best wide receivers available: Malik Neighbors, Devontae Smith, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, Nico Collins, who's been falling a little bit. And then running back wise, I think we're not even going to look at that right now. So the question is, do you want to go quarterback, which in the 4th round with Jared Goff, Watson, Cousins? I don't think so. Or is it time, to get into the tight end market? Only Sam Laporta has been drafted so far. So what's the direction?
So my thing, I'd probably just take our what we think is our best wide receiver. We're gonna really go garbage second quarterback. I would actually be eyeing Cousins, just like in the same McCaffrey road. Just like,
I think we can get him in the next spin though, in the 5th round.
I think. Yeah, that's what I think.
So you want to go Neighbors,
best wide receiver here, and then go Cousins in the next round.
Well, I'm going to leave that too. Pittman, Devontae Smith, or the rookie Malik Neighbors. And by the way, Malik Neighbors could end up in a bad spot. Like, say he gets drafted 9th to the Bears. He's buried behind Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. That's not great for a 4th round pick. So how do you want to play this?
Yeah, I mean, that's I'm probably going to go, let's see. I'm probably going to go Smith or Pittman. Who's younger between Smith and Pittman? I can't remember.
They're about the same age. How about this? Pittman's the number 1 on his team, where Smith is the number 2. Does that change?
The only thing there is I kind of feel like, I mean, maybe this is heresy to say, but I kind of feel like Smith is a better talent, right?
Agreed.
And Pittman's a number one. So, okay, if we're going to go with my short-term bias and stuff like that, then I'm going to go with Pittman.
I agree with you here. Pittman at the 4-9. So we take him there. Smith is obviously the next pick. Trey McBride goes off the board. Nico Collins after that. James Cook, a little early there, 5th round. Don't mind. Jordan Addison, DJ Moore. So now we're back on the clock again here, Peter.
Yeah.
This
is where I would go Cousins and just, we're good. We're set at quarterback, and now we're just going to probably take a couple wide receivers in a row. That's probably
all right. So here's the available quarterbacks: it's Jared Goff, Watson, Bryce Young, Cousins. Given the ADP and Cousins, could the perception that he could, not start the season because he's coming off the injury. Do you want to play chicken one more round, or do you want to just take him right here?
So if this was redraft,
no, not redraft, but Dynasty.
I'm just saying, if it was redraft or single quarterback, then I'd be like, it's fine, right? If this is a 2-quarterback non-keeper league, I might even be like, okay, let's say it. But here, I think I would probably just take the second quarterback because you're just going to be in a world of hurt here pretty soon at quarterback. So I'd probably just take him.
So you don't want a chance. Okay, so we're just going to take Kirk Cousins in the 5th round right here. Yeah. Okay, draft Cousins. Let's see what comes back to us. Okay.
Let's see if we could have had another quarterback because everyone's already set.
No, you're right because that would have. So all right, so yeah,
we could have maybe made it. But,
do you want to cheat a little? You want me to rewind it and cheat and see what would happen?
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, there's a pretty good wide receiver run in there that we probably maybe, or I could have seen maybe coming or whatever.
And by the way, you started off this conversation saying, "Oh, I'm in baseball mode," but dude, you're crushing this draft right now. This is what I'm talking about. See, I would have been the guy that punted, taken Malik Neighbors, then we'd be sitting there with our pants down with no second quarterback.
Well, when you're not in full football mode, you can still do the first 5 rounds of any draft. It's when you start getting in the later rounds that you probably lose your edge.
We're only going to fill out a starting lineup before we go. All right, so here we go now in the 6th round. Our team is CJ Stroud and Kirk Cousins are our quarterback. I like that. And by the way, if you take Kirk Cousins in a startup draft, I'm in a startup draft right now. I have Cousins. Like in the garbage rounds, just grab Taylor Heineke, right? He's going to, if Cousins for some reason goes pup, at least you have a quarterback who no one else is going to take, right? So
that's true. I mean, a lot of it depends on your format. I mean, how deep is it? Do you have IR spots, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, so, but you're going to need a quarterback. And if you don't want to draft the 3rd or you just don't have room for him,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, because our backups are available on the waiver wire and that kind of stuff.
Yep. All right, so we also have Christian McCaffrey as our anchor running back. I love the value we got there in our 3rd round. And then Garret Wilson and Michael Pittman. So we can go any direction now. We have our best players available are Josh Jacobs. Here, I'll go from running back. We can go Jacobs, Javonte, DeAndre. By the way, what do you think about Jacobs on Green Bay? Do you think this buoys his value? Is the same as last year, worse? Josh Jacobs is shaping up to be a value in all formats, Peter.
I think I'm pretty high on him. I think he'll get a lot of passes. We know A.J. Dillon, who resigned, right?
Yes, but he was garbage, even when he got clarified.
He's not like an imposing threat. No, I'm super high on it. I mean, there's some injury risk, right? He's got a lot of mileage on him. But the offense last year, the second half of the year for the Packers looked really enticing. Yeah, I'm super high. I mean, I'm a Vikings fan and down, but I'm actually pretty high on the Packers this year from an offense perspective. So, yeah, I'm
with this pick though, Peter, I want to put forward the idea that we take Dalton Kincaid here. Dalton Kincaid is a top 4 or 5 tight end in Dynasty already. And then I don't really think there is a tight end one. Everyone has Sam Laporta, Trey McBride up there. But it's like any of those guys can be the tight end one. You just have to order them. With them trading away Diggs, and right now, let's assume they get a 1st round wide receiver. They only have Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir. I mean, Dalton Kincaid is set up for one of these monster seasons with Josh Allen. Do you think that we should just secure that tight end position in a tight end premium, take him right here? Because it does fall off to a little bit of, the abyss after this. So unless you want Kelsey.
I mean, I really like the value. I'd probably do it. But at the same time, I told you my philosophy for these leagues is like, I just would not be afraid to just totally punt tight end and just keep accumulating, younger wide receivers right then. But this one makes sense. It's like landing in your lap, it's kind of a good spot. We don't really know 100% what we're doing here in the draft. We could go a bunch of different directions. We got quarterback short up. We've got, 2 wide receivers, running back. So we could easily do it. It's not a big deal. So yeah,
And
I mean, I could be talked into it. So for sure.
he's like a wide receiver, Kincaid, right? He's not really a tight end. He's
Well,
a
I mean, also if he also fits a little bit of my year one philosophy where as of right now, it looks like he's going to be like the only game in town, right? So now I think that'll change because I have a feeling the Bills will probably do
they're
something
taken.
aggressive in terms of either like making a trade or signing some wide receivers and things like that. So like maybe it won't look as as sunny for him 3 weeks from now when or if they infuriatingly do something like draft another first round tight end or something.
They're not doing that.
But,
there's no way.
well, I mean, but last year, we would have been sitting here at the exact same spot last year, and we would have been like, really, they're going to draft a tight end, like in the first round. Really, that helps them. I mean, they have a glaring need at all these other skill positions, like tight end, so like you just never know. But the point is, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm totally gonna be talking to pulling the trigger on it, but I just know that like in the dynasty leagues I'm always like, I just need more wide receivers. I just need more wide receivers.
So okay, so let's
that in the back of my head.
Let's look at our options. So wide receivers that are available are Stephon Diggs, JSN, Debo, George Pickens, Jaden Reed, Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper. I think there'll be some good options for us in the next spin around.
Certainly 5 picks for now. I mean, if you're looking at this, put those back up on there so I can have some.
The wide receivers. Here you go.
Yeah. I like Pickens.
Yeah, me too.
I think he's got a ton of it. But you could also go more short term with like Kupp. I mean Cooper Kupp.
Mike Evans, yeah, Cooper Kupp, totally. How about this? How about we take Kincaid?
I mean, let me ask you this question. I mean, Kupp could be the number 1 wide receiver this year. Is it that crazy? I mean, I wouldn't bet against it, but like, you're getting to the point where there's not many players on the board anymore that you could see being like number 1 overall at their position. I mean, so.
Can we play a little chicken though? Let's take Kincaid. I bet you Kupp or Pickens will be there for us. And if not, then I take the L.
I'm with you on that one.
All right. So we're going to go Kincaid and we're going to hope Pickens or Kupp is there for us at the 704. Here we go. Let's see what happens. If not, wait, let's see. Let me get out of that. Okay. If not, let's see at the 704, they're both there, Peter. We could have had them both.
Well, not bad. I mean, you want to go year 1 more with Kupp this year or Pickens? Actually, they're probably.
Oh, yeah. I'm either one here. I could go. I could see either way.
I'm trying to see who we have higher on our
on the RotoWire rankings.
Year 1, cheat sheet. 1 year outlook cheat sheet.
I would say Kupp because just like looking at like the best ball rankings, Kupp goes ahead of Pickens, but age is a factor. I mean, Kupp's going to be 31 here. If you're watching along here, just put in the comments who you think we should take at this point. If you think we should take Cooper Kupp or George Pickens at the 704, I'm going to leave it in your hands. So we played chicken.
I'm more leaning to Pickens, just because.
Okay, all right. Well, Pickens it is.
I mean, he's got better long-term value and maybe arguably as good this year value, right? So
if we're drafting George Pickens, who do we hope is the longer-term quarterback? Do we hope it's Russell Wilson or do we hope it's Justin Fields for fantasy?
I don't know, I mean, I kind of feel like Russell Wilson for sure because like if Russell Wilson can just, have 1 or 2 more years where he's even close to what he was before, he's got more passing upside than he's displayed more in his downside years of passing than Fields ever has. You know what I mean? So.
Yep. All right, Peter. We'll go rapid fire here because I want to leave plenty of time to talk to you about the business of fantasy sports. If you're watching this draft right now, as soon as we're done with this draft, I'm here with Peter Schoenke. He is the president and co-founder of RotoWire. Are you the co-founder or are you the founder? Which one are you going to take?
I'd like co-founder.
Co-founder. All right, you're going to share a little bit.
Match, I guess, but like things would not have happened if Herbilk and Jeff Erickson were not involved.
That's true. But okay. All right. Fair. I'm busting your chops, putting you on the spot here. But we're going to talk a little business of fantasy sports in a moment. All right. Let's go rapid fire here. We have 3 receivers. We have McCaffrey. Is this time to start looking at running backs, or do you want to load up on Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, a good spot? We're not going to touch. We can go another QB with Baker Mayfield, who looks like he just got another couple of years of guaranteed starting. What's the direction you want to go here?
Either if there's a sexy upside younger wide receiver, I would take him. Otherwise, we could probably go.
Christian Watson would be that guy. would be the younger upside guy. Hollywood Brown, 1-year contract but he'll be available in the next spin. But 1-year contract with Patrick Mahomes. After that, Jamison Williams. I think those guys are a little bit more dart throwy.
This is where like I'm sort of behind on my research in football, where I don't know the possible draftees. And if we're doing this 3 weeks from now, then obviously it becomes a lot more clear. But like,
yeah, well, we're doing it now.
I'm going to take a gamble on somebody that we think is going to be like maybe a sneak into the second round and have a sizable role or something like that, but has a long-term, future upside. And that's where I'm going to admit that I don't have that up.
But that's. So I told you, I think that's a feature, not a bug at this point, because we're going to roll this again. I'm going to do it with another guest. We're going to do another dynasty draft after the draft. And we're going to compare the two. So,
okay.
All right. So
who's your top sexy upside, hasn't been drafted, prospect, wide receiver who might get taken in? We can hit the lotto and he lands in either a really good short-term spot or a longer-term looks good.
I mean, Troy Franklin out of Oregon or Xavier Worthy out of Texas, the guy who
both guys are great. I would take Worthy. I mean, the guy was awesome with the combine, didn't have a lot of production in college, but I could just see him hit the lotto in terms of landing spot, So,
all right. Well, we nailed it. What do you think is the lotto in terms of landing spot? Which team, just, don't even look at the draft board. Where would you, is it Dallas? Is it Miami? Is it the Chiefs? I mean, is it the Bills trading up for them?
Probably the Bills. I mean, just because you got to look at somebody who's got a good offense that's wide receiver needy, and there's a ton of targets. So that could make a ton of sense. I mean, the Bills would probably be ideal, so.
Okay. We're in the 9th round here. We're just going to take BPA at this point. Quarterback. Do you want to secure a third quarterback with Baker Mayfield? Will Levis?
I'm probably going to go running back. We are looking a little bit more short-term horizon. What's on the?
So we got Zach Charbonnet with new regime in Seattle. Doesn't mean necessarily anything, but James Conner.
I'm probably going Zamir White. I don't know where he is. I don't know where he's going ADP wise here. Maybe I'm reaching, but I just think that guy's going to get just a ton of work this year.
Zamir White, good. Zamir White strikes me as the guy that's going to rise up the rankings, because let's say the Raiders, take a day 3 running back, a round 5 running back. Come on, Zamir White is in there, already produced on an NFL field. I love that pick.
Yeah, the only problem about that is he's just a gamble here, because the draft could just eradicate his value, right? I don't think they're taking a running back, but
there's no. So yeah. All right, just to review real quick, we'll just to take a look at our squad, our roster. We have CJ Stroud and Kirk Cousins, running backs McCaffrey and Zamir White. Our three receivers are Garret Wilson, Pittman, Pickens. We have Dalton Kincaid. Brilliant pick by us. Brilliant pick. And now we have to fill out one more flex spot and then a couple bench spots, and then we'll wrap up this draft here. So
you can run the projected standings and all that kind of stuff, but I got to think year one, we got a pretty good team to try to win year one.
And I think we have some good liquid long-term assets as well. All right, so we are now, I'm going to leave this up to you. We can pick another running back here with Austin Eckler, Trey Benson, who is projected maybe to be one of the top 2 or 3 running backs off the board. Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. Also, whoever that first RB1 is, nobody really knows who it's going to be, Peter. That's what's so cool.
But I'm not taking the guy. I'm always just not taking the guy that's got the ACL tear or whatever.
Right, the Jamison Williams of running backs, something like that, right?
So I'm avoiding that one. So.
All right,
I mean, at this point we can just go any direction. I'm probably just going to take the best third quarterbacks in play, speculative upside, running back or wide receiver from, who's ever the next highest on your board.
Jamison Williams would be a good upside. I mean, he showed a little bit in the playoffs. If you
that would be good. I like him. I obviously talk down guys with ACL tears, but he's come back. He's
Jerry Jeudy, new contract in Cleveland.
I don't get that one at all. I'm not really high on him.
All right.
You got to show me something, So
I would say Baker Mayfield, because he can net us a first if we need to in the trade market. Somebody will give us a late first when they have a quarterback injury, and we'll at least have take a guess right now, Peter. Baker Mayfield finished as QB what last year in fantasy
he
points?
was pretty good, but
take a guess.
What was he? What was he? He had a ton of attempts. I don't know, probably 8.
QB9, you got it.
There you go.
All right, so we're going to take.
I would take my best speculative either wide receiver or running back talent in the draft, maybe Jamison Williams, and I'd come back. Actually, I would take.
Let's pick. Let's make a
Okay, so
decision.
if Will Levis is still out there,
He's there.
I would love him.
All right, we're
He's a
taking
really good.
Levis right here at 10.
Yeah,
All right,
I
and
mean,
now we're back
I'm
on.
not, he's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm a Will Levis fan in terms of a believer and all that kind of stuff, but he showed a spark last year. They're giving him great weapons around him. I mean, well, it could at this point, it could pay off. He could easily be your long-term quarterback here in the 2 dynasty format, no problem.
Totally with that. Now we're back on the clock again. QB still on the board, but I think we're done there. Running back wise, in the 11th round, you want to take a spec ad on Blake Corum, Jonathan Brooks. You already said you don't want the ACL guy. How about Raheem Mostert for production now?
He's kind of guy like he had his best year. I'd actually probably go
Jameson
Corum.
Williams.
Corum or Jason or Jameson Williams.
All right, JMO, we're taking JMO here.
Okay.
All right, so we'll come back around. We got 2 more picks. DeAndre Hopkins on the board. Troy Franklin, little upside wide receiver. You said you like those guys. Gabe Davis with the new contract in Jacksonville. Lad McConkey, who could be a first-round pick. We did a nice video on him on the RotoWire YouTube page. Maybe pick 33 to the Panthers. Lad McConkey.
I would go Franklin or Corum. Corum didn't get taken. No, he did get taken. I'd go Franklin probably. At this point, I'm
okay. Over Lad McConkey.
Yeah.
Okay. Troy Franklin is our pick.
It's not like I'm a.
And now Lad McConkey's still there. If you want him, or you want Hopkins.
At this point, I'd be taking shots. So I'm either taking like shots like that, or really short-term running backs who have jobs or something like that. That could pan out.
How about Marshawn Lloyd or Jalen Wright? Both are projected to be 4th or 5th round running backs that could land in good spots. Or you have Braylon Allen, of course, the big fella. If you want to take some shots on running backs, and Jonathan Brooks still there, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I like Braylon Allen though, but that's where being in Madison, Wisconsin, probably.
All right, we're taking him.
Probably biased.
All right, we got an A plus. That's bad sign, but you never want to get an A plus. But here's our team, real quick, Peter: CJ Stroud, Christian McCaffrey, Zamir White, Garrett Wilson, Michael Pittman, George Pickens, Dalton Kincaid, Xavier Worthy, Jameson Williams, Kirk Cousins, Will Levis, Troy Franklin, Braylon Allen. I like it, but all right, everybody, you can let us know in the comments. Let
me ask you. So coming in cold off the bench with a different perspective, was there anything there that we did differently that you probably would have done?
A lot. It was the Xavier Worthy. I would not have reached there, but I'm glad we did now and I love the Zamir White because I've been afraid to take him this early, but you outlined you're like, look, let's not overthink this. He's going to get the workload. He's a good back. He's done in the NFL. Why are we going to wait 2 more rounds and then get sniped and then be stuck with,
that's maybe the good or bad of me not really having a good command of the ADP for this type of format, at this juncture, right? So it's like,
but ADP ruins you because then you become beholden to it. So especially after like round 4, Peter, screw ADP.
Oh, I know. But the thing about ADP is I'm very anti-ADP. It's really super flawed, right? And so people just become too beholden to it. But that said, you want to even late in drafts, you don't want to be making like 4-round errors, right? That kind of stuff. And
sure.
At this point, I don't have the command of even that, at later on. So
right, you don't want to be taking Calvin Ridley where 3 rounds ahead of where you need to, but. Again, that's what this exercise is for. I knew you would not be in football, like all in football mode. You're a huge baseball dude right now, but that is part of the exercise. I think that this gives, like I told you, there's the dynasty bros like myself that, oh my God, you took this guy there. And I really believe that this is a meaningful exercise. And I think this will help a lot of people.
You need to do this. Just a side plug for my favorite site. You need to do AutoNew format for this dynasty football. That's
say again. You do what?
AutoNew, that platform, that site.
What is that? Explain what it is. Plug it.
Oh, okay. AutoNew is a great site for football. I mean, you can play baseball there, basketball, football. The football is dynasty. It's more of a salary cap. As opposed to pure dynasty like this. Obviously, where you keep players forever. You can also spend money on college prospects. I really like that format. So if we're talking, keeper dynasty, whatever, it's kind of a hybrid in some ways. Obviously, it's salary cap driven, so it's not true dynasty. You just don't pick the player and own him forever. but and it's got that Debbie component as well. Yeah, and that kind
Peter,
of
you're
stuff.
giving out free commercials here. I mean, come on. You're
I know. I like them. I like it. It's a good product. But I'm just throwing it out there as it's just a good. I feel like it's another way, it's another format that people like you who are super into all the Dynasty long-term horizon outlook on it. It's a good one. So.
Well, somebody who actually paid for a commercial here, let's give them a plug. How about that? On-demand DFS, all right? Bear with me, Peter, for a moment here. I'm talking to you, audience. This is a great new site called On-Demand DFS. You ever think back to the golden days of fantasy football? When it was all about the love of the game, the camaraderie, and yes, the bragging rights? Well, our friends at On-Demand DFS are bringing those days back with their revolutionary app that's changing the game of fantasy fans everywhere. Gone are the days of confusing entry fees, playing against unknown masses, or juggling multiple apps, or the trash talk with your league mates. On-Demand DFS is here to streamline your fantasy football experience, making it more about strategy, fun, and importantly, the community. With On-Demand DFS, you can create contests in seconds, invite your friends, no entry fees, no gimmicks, just pure fantasy football bliss. And here's the kicker, Peter. You're not limited to the current season of players. Imagine crafting your dream team from over 5,000 legends and today's stars using real historical data to simulate the action. And for those who hate the wait, you'll love our turbo mode. Contests wrap up in minutes, not hours, keeping the excitement all day long. Download On-Demand DFS app and get started with your 30-day free trial. Dive into fantasy football experience that's rich in history, strategy, and most importantly, fun. It's time to create your legacy with the ultimate lineup of legends. Live in fantasy football dreams like never before. I put a link in the description of this video where I believe there's some sort of surprise discount on that, and including the 30 days. Let me ask you this. You can create a on-demand DFS, Peter, like your ultimate lineup. Let's just go through this. One person at each position, the best fantasy player. I'm giving you full access to the pool. Who would be your fantasy quarterback all time?
All time? Well, I'd have to go back and look at all the records.
No. This is top of the head.
The guys that are the most fun, not the guys that are the most statistically. As a biased Vikings fan, Dante Culpepper was always.
Oh, that's a good one.
Not only did you get the bombs to Moss, but he's the only quarterback, at least in the modern era, like color photography, where when he would get tackled, he would take it to the actual person tackling them because he was so big, right? It was so that was always fun to watch.
All right, I'm going to go for my pick. We'll go back and forth. My pick is going to be that peak Michael Vick season. I'm going to take him as my QB. All right, you're up on a running back. Who are you taking? All-time fantasy running back.
Well, probably Marshall Faulk. I mean, you just get everything, so.
Yep. I'm obviously going to take whatever LaDainian Tomlinson season was the best. You're up on the wide receiver. Who are you taking here? You're going to pair Culpepper with
huge bias Vikings fan, Randy Moss. But he had the greatest all-time fantasy season, in my opinion, his rookie year, because statistically it was obviously very good. Maybe it's not the best, but it's up there. But literally, you got him for free. I mean, he was he's probably one of the biggest values. And I would also argue he was the most fun fantasy season to watch ever, because it wasn't just the fact that you were accumulating all those points, but everyone was just this bomb. It was it was the rave of the whole season. It was just so much fun to watch. So I mean, you put all those combined, I argue that it's the greatest fantasy season in any sport.
And if you want to take him for that 50 or the 20 plus touchdown season in New England, that's fine too. So still the same player. Who's going to be your starting tight end on demand DFS?
That's a good one. I mean, it's hard not to have Kelsey, right? I mean,
or Gronk.
Gronk was too, but I don't. Yeah, Gronk had some really good seasons, But
yeah.
I mean, Kelsey just blew the doors off lots of times, So.
All right. I like it. All right, so that's on-demand DFS. All right, everybody, we're going to take a very short break right here for our audio audience, YouTube audience, to stay with us. And we come back, we have Peter, president of RotoWire, here. So we're going to ask him a few questions about the business of fantasy sports. We'll be back in just a few seconds. All right, we're back on the RotoWire Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. Alan Seslowsky, but we're here with Peter Schoenke. Peter, I'm just curious, what initially drew you to this crazy idea 20 plus years ago of starting fantasy football company? Because, nowadays it's everybody knows about it, but back then, I'm sure you were faced with a lot of questions what do you do?
You mean why did I start playing, or why did I start as a company?
What gave you the crazy idea and the balls to think that this could be a real viable business?
Well, see, like that's where like you asked me before, like, oh, do you consider yourself the founder or whatever? And the idea was kind of mine, but really the impetus to do it was more probably Herb Ilk, our tech, co-founder. He really wanted to start an internet business, and we had a bunch of ideas that we just kind of muddled back and forth at a bar. And so
So you were
then when
drunk when you thought of this, is what you're saying?
yeah, yeah, exactly. But we had a whole bunch of ideas, and and then eventually I just kind of said, I think what would work is if we just did fantasy. My day job was I was a wire service reporter for Dow Jones, Wall Street Journal. It's the same company, and I covered the futures and options market in Chicago, and so, I had to figure out why things are going up and down. And back then, you could go to a terminal on the floor. The internet and personal computing was not the same. And you would be able to, get a screen with a stock and all that. It would show the chart, the pricing, and all the latest news. Something that's just very common today. And I just thought, why don't we just create the same thing for fantasy baseball? And that's kind of the genesis of the idea. And then after that, we just were off and running. But yeah, it was more just to create a business, and it just happened to be like, well, there's all these businesses we could create. Why don't we actually do the thing that we spend all our time on anyway? And so that was really kind of it. So
Yeah, no, before I came on full time, I mean, most of the time at my office job, I was, just doing enough work so I can go look at my fantasy teams and, and do everything with fantasy, editing video, all that. So yeah, I just think nowadays it's an industry, it's a business, and people, there's a ton of people working in it part-time, full-time. It blows my mind to think about you, Herb, and the other founders that you just thought it could be a business. And there's a bunch of fantasy companies that that have lasted the test of time. What do you think has made RotoWire one of the companies that we've seen a lot of them come and go, mid-size, large size. So what do you think that RotoWire has done especially well in order to stay viable and is still growing 20 plus years later?
well, I think, especially the early days when there was like no money coming in and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we just had a lot of tenacity, right? We just stuck with it, and had a lot of passion for it, and that got us through a lot of tough times. And so, like, when I see other startups and companies that have come along, lots of times when they hit those periods, that really test them and adds a lot of stress, they're not able to make it through.
Define
And
test them. What do you mean? How do they get tested?
I mean, if you look at the history of the business, it's been almost 25 plus years now. I mean, there's many times when we're basically out of money, or had a significant tech issue, like we were just down, or had some just resources that we didn't need, or whatever, just some sort of crisis, and lots of times, if it's I always think if it was insurance, that we were insurance company or something that we just didn't really care about that much, we probably would have just given up, and been like, well, okay, that's it. That's the end of this. But since we were so passionate about it, we just found ways to grind through it. So
Sports betting obviously has blown up. It's legalization. The company that bought RotoWire, gambling.com, right? I mean, their business is some portion of affiliate marketing and conversions to people getting the sports betting. How do you think, and I know it might sound generic, but there's people that have actually asked me this question. How do you think fantasy sports and sports betting are actually going to merge? Like, they're on like kind of a collision course. They're parallel and somewhat, but when they actually cross over, how do you see the two coming together?
well, I mean, the big thing is, I think when sports betting when it became legal for states to have sports betting, right? And so now we've seen all these states, have legal sports betting now. There's kind of a notion that, well, fantasy's dead because the only reason that people play fantasy is because they can't gamble legally. And that's just been proven to not be true. All forms of fantasy are doing really well, still growing, still doing really well. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of convergence. There'll be a lot of like hybrid products and things like that. But I just sort of think like the core fantasy stuff is still going to do just fine. And if you look at like the NFBC, the NFFC, and FFPC, like those season-long high-stakes contests, they're still doing great, right? They're still growing at a good clip. Everything's going really well. So, the fact that there's more legal sports betting hasn't impacted them. So I'm just more like, I think the core business of fantasy, the reason that you play the Dynasty draft we just did, that's just not really impacted. But there will be some new products and some things that will happen, and we've seen some of that. there are some changes in laws that still need to happen, and some things that would facilitate that. Like the Wire Act is still the thing I'm really watching.
What
That
is
I think,
that?
okay, so right now, for sports
Explain it like
betting,
you're talking to my grandmother.
yeah, right. Well, okay, for sports betting is legal in certain states. Like it's legal in fully, in Illinois, and it's legal in New York, right? You can have online sports betting. They have in-person sports betting, but you can't have a pool of sports betting that goes between the two states. And so
Mm,
it kind of limits the products you can have. So for example, it's March Madness season, and everyone loves playing the brackets, which is a gambling product because you're picking teams, not individual players. Um, I want to enter the massive, nationwide, I'm going to pick the bracket and win, just millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, that's not possible to have right now because of the Wire Act, which prevents the transfer of
interesting.
gambling pools across states. So at some point that'll probably go away. I don't know how many years it will take, but that's one of the things I'm looking at that would create a whole new suite of products. Because right now, that kind of product doesn't really exist really, and so once that happens, things can change. And in Europe, there's a lot of products like that that have mass appeal, where on a Sunday or Saturday, sorry, you can pick all the soccer matches, and you can come up with the exact scores and all that kind of stuff. There's like this huge pool, and it's really popular. That doesn't exist in the U.S.
When you're talking about legalization and you're dealing with, politicians and organizations, what do you think the biggest misconception about fantasy, DFS, all these games are for somebody on the outside that maybe has a little bit of control? What do you think I guess the biggest obstacle to persuading some of the lawmakers?
Well, the lawmakers, it's the biggest thing
Regulators.
I would say about if you're just somebody didn't know the issue at all, is I always try to explain that um, all things betting and sports betting too. On the outside, it looks like a morality play, but behind the scenes, it's a turf war between billionaires. And so, like that, you kind of have to look at it from that perspective. And so every state's a little bit different. And so, why don't we have sports betting in Wisconsin? It's because we have tribal gaming, and we have like these stakeholders who, already are in the market, and they have their interests in their casinos, and so they don't want to have online sports betting. And where other states didn't, it didn't have that and have a different approach. And a lot of people from the outside just don't really understand the dynamics of the politics. They're like, why don't we have it in Wisconsin like we have it in Illinois and everywhere else? And it's like you kind of have to like look under the hood and kind of figure out who are the players here and why things happen in the politics at all. And it gets confusing. And that's unfortunate for the consumers, because then they just don't really understand why this is, and then that's where we get a lot of misconceptions, as for why things are happening.
I mean, you've been doing this now, like we talked about, 20, how many years is it? What year did RotoWire launch? Was it in the 90s
97,
or
97, yeah.
it's okay?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, just observationally, you still look as passionate about it. Maybe there's different facets of it. What's the thing that still gets you fired up to do all these years later?
I mean, it's a great mix for the business of things that are fun. I mean, it's sports, love sports. It's real-time info news hound. I come from a journalism background. It's technology, so trying to always keep RotoWire on the latest and greatest in technology and ahead of the curve. That's really good. The politics and legal standpoint, that's pretty interesting too. I like that stuff. So it's kind of a mix of all of that. So that's what makes me passionate about it. It's pretty fun. So.
Well, you actually, it was a good lead in from my next question about technology. I mean, it's AI is a hot topic. I mean, from what I do for you in rest of RotoWire, AI is I've seen an immediate impact. How do you see AI? What would you like it to do with fantasy sports, and what do you think? And the early indications are it's actually gonna do in the next 3 to 5 years.
In fantasy, I don't think it's going to impact fantasy per se much in the very short term.
How about the waiver wire, or AI waiver wire, where it just sets it for me? I don't have to do anything.
But it's just not that smart, Like I mean, maybe it'll get there, but like, it's kind of like when Twitter. I remember about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, there are the companies that came out with similar large language models and things where they would analyze like earnings reports and things like that. And there were a couple people that I knew, they were like, oh, that's going to be the end of RotoWire. They're just going to be able to go out there and grab all the info on players and all that kind of stuff and come up with this algorithm, or when Twitter came along, people were like, oh, RotoWire's dead because, you just be able to go to Twitter and find out the latest news. But it's like, no, that's not the case. I mean, yes, Twitter's a great tool, AI is a great tool, but you still need that. It's not smart enough to really, pick out which source is good. Is this the real Adam Schefter or the fake Adam Schefter? Is this is this a good source or not a good source? What does this mean? So like there's a lot of that nuance that maybe the technology will get there in the long term, but in the short term, it's just, I'm kind of skeptical it's going to get there. So, you're on the clock right now. We have pick 17 in this draft, and there's this player up. It's like, okay, well, we need to double check. What's up with this guy? Is he healthy? What's the situation? What are the pertinent facts that are going on? When you go to RotoWire, and you type in the player's name, you get a succinct synopsis of what's going on with that guy, and you can do it. And like when you do that on Twitter, maybe, maybe not. And so AI, I think, is going to be kind of like that too, because all AI is doing is just gathering stuff from.
It's scraping the internet. It's scraping the internet,
more or less. I mean, that's at the point where these large language models are right now, and it's very similar to Twitter, where it's just really hit or miss and not super reliable. So in the short term, in terms of just like sort of eradicating our business, I'm not worried about that. Now maybe like a couple years later, they'll be playing back. Somebody will be playing this back and I'll look foolish, but I don't think so. But obviously, what's going to do is it's probably just going to save people a lot of work, for the process that we do for our jobs in terms of like gathering information and editing and
compiling
reports and things like that. I mean, that has a lot of upside to save us a lot of time. But I don't think it's going to fundamentally change fantasy anytime in the near future.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. Like for my job, what I do a lot of video editing on the RotoWire YouTube page, on some of our other social channels, TikTok, all that. And I have AI tools. By the way, I've got to talk to Tim Schuler, our the guy who signs off on this stuff. We've got to renew some of these subscriptions. But no, they're great. They don't. So if I'm editing a video, I could feed in the whole video. It'll chop it up into like 15 clips for me. Now, the clips aren't perfect. They still need to be massaged. They still need to be, tweaked and reordered and things like that. But a clip that used to take me an hour, Peter, now takes me 27 minutes. And then eventually that's going to take me 12 minutes. So, and then you figure out what's this $100 a year subscription. It does actually produce more output. And this is, like you said, the very early stages. And that's just video editing. That's affected me. You talked a little bit earlier about gaming, right? Did you ever consider being a game operator? And if so, if not, then, why did you pull back from that and stick with what RotoWire does best, which is provide news, business to business stuff, and of course, elite fantasy content. So game operator, did you ever cross your mind?
Well, yeah. I mean, at one point, Roto News, which is the predecessor to RotoWire, but basically the same company because we changed our name. It's a long story. So in 1998, we launched commissioner services, and we were the first company to offer free commissioner services, which was revolutionary at the time and has proven to be sort of the winning model for sort of your, common league manager system. And so we had paid games at the time. We did all that. But the big media companies kind of came in. We had a hiccup along the way, in terms of, like I told you before, when you didn't have money or whatever. And so we kind of lost that market, and big media companies came and took it over. So I think if we'd gone a different direction, maybe we would have been the ones running games and on contests and all that kind of stuff. But after that, it just was like, the opportunity was more the content than it was the games. And the game stuff is in some ways not as much fun, because when you're running a game operation, when things break, I mean, it's hell, right?
Look what just happened with our friends over at the NFFC. I mean, to know, it's like that.
Well, not even that. That aside, I'm talking about like you and I. We just developed the greatest games of all time for football. It's a paid contest, awesome. Sunday morning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes before kickoff. It doesn't work. The site's down.
Right.
It's like,
tech issue with no time to fix it. I understand.
Your customers are irate. So it's just like that part of the aspect of that operation is no fun. And so, but it's also, I don't want to sound down on it either. I mean, it's also, it's fun to do those business. You look what, the guys at FFPC and NFBC and Greg Ambrosius and those guys, they have a blast, running those things in the community they create and all that kind of stuff. So that aspect is awesome too. So
they always say it beats digging ditches for a living, right?
Yes, exactly. But no, just more as the opportunity was there more for content, and it's just kind of how the deck was shuffled early on in the day. And after that, it just, it just kept working. And, we've debated whether to get into the league management business, or which we still do. We still have the baseball. So we still have that, as that's kind of a relic of our early days. We still have a baseball league managed service, which is actually, I think, one of the better ones on the internet. But getting into games and all that kind of stuff, especially daily, we thought about, do we get into daily and offer daily? But it's just, you can only spend your time on so much stuff. And, we just stuck with what was working and where our greenest grass was.
Company like RotoWire, again, we went over all of the the reasons why people subscribe and have stayed loyal to it. What do you think? What do you think is the best way to continue to market this company? Right? Like, what do you think? Like, if you were pitching it to someone, or what does RotoWire do really well that you think will and has done well that keeps subscribers coming in and plunking down their hard-earned money every month?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about helping you win your league, right, and saving you time. And then what we try to do is to do that for games and contests beyond just the season-long baseball and football, which is what we started with. So we have the whole picks and props world, and we have a new tool for that. And we try to add a lot of value there, so that we give you a really just digestible, quick way to look at, like, who the best options are on the board based on our projections, based on a bunch of other factors.
So it's tools, Peter. You think tools is the way?
Tools and content. At the end of the day, it's like, I just feel like, if you are a big player in any of these games, and RotoWire should be really impactful in terms of your ability to, do well and play them, and and have fun. And if we keep doing that, we'll be fine. And we've been very, very very good at just constantly having a product that adds a lot of value in all these areas, for just about every sport that we do. And and that really speaks to the people behind it, who are just super passionate, not just myself, but everybody else here. And if you're I may not be super up on as up or as into it for Dynasty, 2 quarterback format for football, but we have someone here. We usually have multiple people who can do it with the best of them. So I know you're not a fantasy hockey player, but if for some reason all of a sudden you decided that you needed to play fantasy hockey, you can be assured that there are people at RotoWire and tools at RotoWire that will make it so that you are going to do as well and enjoy that as much as possible that you could for hockey. That's kind of the value proposition.
2 more questions for you, Peter, then I'll let you go. Get on with your day. What do you think the biggest danger to the fantasy sports business is? Like, whether it's gaming, whether it's content. So what do you think the biggest danger spots are ahead in the next 2 to 5 years?
I mean, it's probably just more on the legal front, that there's actually an issue in California right now that really could impact fantasy sports tremendously, where the Attorney General of California is reviewing the legality of fantasy sports. There's no law on the books in California about fantasy. We as an industry have been successful in passing laws in 26 states to sort of backstop fantasy and confirm that it's legal. And that's not the situation in California. I mean, we believe the law, we know the law in California, if you look at it, says that games of skill are legal. Fantasy is a game of skill, so it should be legal.
Right.
But
games of chance are gambling. Games of skill
are. It doesn't specifically ever mention fantasy sports anywhere in the California law or Constitution. So it could always be kind of called into question. And we tried to pass a law there before. I testified multiple times in the California legislature in support of that. And so the AG is expected to issue an opinion on that, which usually carries a lot of weight, but is not the be-all, end-all. And so we'll see what happens there. But that's the kind of sort of big picture stuff that could. Now, luckily, that's a big picture stuff that could impact fantasy. Luckily, all of our work over the years to pass those laws and to sort of change the equation of how people view fantasy sports, whether it's gambling or a game of skill, has really paid a lot of dividends, because we're not having those battles in most states, and most people have sort of moved on from the debate in government and elsewhere.
It's because they play fantasy. They play it.
If we were having the same conversation in 1997 or 2002 or 2012, it'd be different. Like big media companies like ESPN back then were afraid to talk about fantasy. Many jurisdictions viewed it, as gambling, if not on the books, at least if you had a discussion with them. And that has changed tremendously from the work of the people in the industry. And so that, we're sort of narrowing the number of places where this is an issue, but still an issue. And so that's probably the biggest systemic threat to fantasy. I don't think it's sports betting or more options, because I believe that over the last years that hasn't proven to be the case. So yeah, it's just that kind of stuff. I think the audience, for audit just keeps growing. And like I said, I think the more hybrid products you have, the more pure sports betting products you have, it's only going to just sort of, build up the ecosystem even more.
All right. Final question to bring you out of here. Will you ever retire, or are they going to have to throw you out of here?
There was a survey, and I wish I could quote it verbatim, but with the FSTA or GA, the trade association, like 4 or 5 years ago. And it was something like to the effect of like almost 90% of the people surveyed said that they were going to play fantasy sports until they died, which is like very, very rare for any kind of product or hobby for someone to say that. And I'm certainly in that book. So from a working perspective, yeah, I'm basically, I don't really know. I can't see the future, but certainly in the short term, unlike the Dynasty format where I'm looking at it on a 1 to 2 years horizon.
Yeah, no, you're too young to retire. One, and number two, like you said, you still look like you're having a good time doing it. In fact, I would argue ever since that you've become more of the president and not the owner, that you're doing even better, right? Because you're able to focus on what you do best and kind of let the corporate umbrella take care of some of the things that sucked your energy away. Is that a fair assessment?
It's definitely different. I don't know if it sucked my energy. I was always doing that, but it's a different mix of stuff, but it's still fun, So like, for me personally, like we did sold the business in 2 years, 2.25 years ago. And I'm at the point now where I could leave and I wouldn't have any, I'm not under, I don't have to stay on or any more money. The transaction is closed, but so I've elected to continue, even though I could, from a financial standpoint, step away and would be fine. But it's because I like the company, I like the people, and certainly love the industry. Yeah. So
we've been lucky.
Still all in it. So.
Yeah, I think anyone that works at RotoWire would agree there. We've all been lucky with how GDC America, gambling.com has handled all this and how we've performed for them. So, hey, one more question, because, right now, a lot of people that work in fantasy football, fantasy sports are either part-time, a lot of people looking to go full-time. What's just a piece of advice now? Because you're someone who hires people to come into the fantasy world. Just give a couple pieces of advice. There's so many people doing content, very short, even just a couple lines here. What's a piece of advice for someone that wants to become a full-time in the fantasy industry, where content is the front of their mind, but obviously there's going to be other factors?
Okay, so 3 things I would say. Number 1 is like, just do content. Do it all the time. Even if you're just, your own blog, your own video podcast, your videos podcast, no one's watching, whatever. The reps, you get better. Second thing is find a niche. Okay. Like literally, if someone tomorrow was the best, I'm trying to think of a good sport here.
IDP.
Look at injury person or EuroLeague basketball injury person, or, just whatever, some, analyzer of, some sort of advanced data for whatever sport. Even in NFL football, we've seen this all the time. Somebody who's going to analyze game film for receivers and then come with reports for it, all kinds of stuff. Just if you own it, someone will find you. Literally, RotoWire in some of these sports, we will get an opportunity. Consumers will be playing more something like women's basketball, for example. There's no women's college season-long basketball game right now. Maybe there is. I'm not sure, but there's not a lot of stuff of women's college basketball. It's growing rapidly in popularity. At some point, RotoWire might need to hire someone who has a lot of expertise on that. Well, we will find you. If you have a blog or a video or something like that, suddenly you will become of interest to us. That's what you got to do by finding a niche. And then the last thing is network. Number 1, go to the FSGA conference, go to the Sloan conference, go to the baseball winter meetings, go to the NFL combine, go to Indianapolis, figure out ways to go there, go to the bars where the people hang out, go to, approach people in the industry. Everyone is, at least in the fantasy business, is very approachable. Connect with them online, but in person especially. I cannot tell you how far that goes. If you could talk to anyone about people who are successful in this industry, let me tell you, Matthew Berry was a grade A networker back in the day when he was nobody, and it was a huge factor in his success. I could say the same thing for many other people. There's a lot of people who want to get into content that just don't want to do that. And, they want to sit at home and just write content and believe that they're going to produce the best content in the world and someone is going to find them. And that is not how it works.
That's great advice. That's great advice. No, that's great advice. I was sitting there like I forgot that I was hosting for a minute. I was listening to you. So, I mean, you can see now, everybody, why we have Peter on at least once a year, hopefully more. Fun to talk to, very knowledgeable about the business. And you know what? We found out today you're a good off-season dynasty drafter.
Well, I can, but again, it's like calling me cold off the bench, right?
Good.
Like
You're Vinny. What was the microwave's name? Vinny Johnson. What was his name?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's an offense.
Yeah, you heat up quick. Yep. All right, everybody. We'll be back next week with another Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast and a whole lot more. If you have any questions about anything Peter said or our draft in the beginning, just leave in the comments. We answer every comment. No person left behind. This is also available if you're watching the video on the RotoWire podcast feed. You could subscribe to that, RotoWire Fantasy Football. And if you want to get behind RotoWire's paywall for free, we talked about all this great content. You can right now for 2 days. Just go to RotoWire.com/pod, POD, RotoWire.com/pod. Put in your email and we give you a free look. There's nothing to cancel. If you don't like the site for some crazy reason, there's nothing else you need to do. But if you love it, you could subscribe in earnest. All right.